classical illusion. Eastern 13 met on the eve of graduation in the private party room of McKelvey's Brauhaus in Riverdale, and the air was boiling with pipe smoke, malt fumes, and motions when Charlie rose to make his historic speech. "Mr. Chairman," he said to Bill Updike, who occupied the temporary chair. "Fellows," he said to the 9 others, and he paused. Then he said, "We are the first alumni." He paused again. "The eyes of the future are on us." Stan Jones was taking notes as recording secretary of the evening, and we have Charlie's address verbatim. You have seen it in the Alumni Club lobby, under glass. Brace yourself. It, too, has vanished. What we do here tonight, therefore, will initiate a whole codex of Eastern tradition. And now, the record records, there was nothing to be heard in that smoky room but the whiz of the electric fan over the lithograph of Woodrow Wilson. I have no hesitation in saying, out loud, that we men in this room tonight, that we're significant, not as individuals, but as the class of 13. And then Charlie drew himself up and said quietly, "They will remember us, and we must give them something to remember." The third sacred canon. "Such as?" said Maury Green, who was to die in a French ditch 5 years later. "A sign," said Charlie. "A symbol, Maury. A symbol of our firstness." Eddie Temple, who was graduating 11th in the class, exhibited his tongue and blew a coarse, fluttery blast. "That may be the sign you want to be remembered by, Ed," began Charlie crossly. "Shut up, Temple," growled Vern Hamisher. "Read that bird out of the party," yelled Zis Brown, who was suspected of holding radical views because his father had stumped for Teddy Roosevelt in 12. "Sounds good," said Bill Updike, scowling. "Go on, Charlie." "What sign?" demanded Rod Black. "Anything specific in mind?" called Johnny Cudwise. Charlie said one word. "Janus." And he paused. "Janus," they muttered, considering him. "Yes, Janus," said Charlie. "The god of good beginnings." "Well, we're beginning," said Maury Green. "Guaranteed result in good endings." "It certainly applies," nodded Bill Updike. "Yeah," said Bob Smith. "Easton's sure on its way to big things." "Janus of the Two Faces," cried Charlie Mason mystically. "I wish to point out that he looks in opposite directions. Say, that's right. The past and the future. Smart stuff. Go on, Charlie." "Janus," cried Charlie. "Janus, who was invoked by the Romans before any other god at the beginning of an important undertaking. Wow, this is certainly important. The beginning of the day, month, and year was sacred to him. Janus was the god of doorways." "Janus!" they shouted, leaping to their feet, and they raised their tankards and drank deep. And so from that night forward, the annual meeting of the class of 13 was held on Janus's Day, the first day of January, and the class of 13 adopted, by unanimous vote, the praenomen of the Januarians. Thus, the double-visaged god became patron of Eastern's posterity, and that is why until recently Eastern official stationery was impressed with his 2 bearded profiles. It is also why the phrase, to be two-faced, when uttered by Columbia or NYU men, usually means to be a student at or a graduate of Eastern U, a development unfortunately not contemplated by Charlie Mason on that historic eve, at least not consciously. But let us leave the profounder explorations to psychiatry. Here it is sufficient to record that, something more than 30 years later, the phrase suddenly took on a grim verisimilitude, and the Januarians thereupon laid it, so to speak, on the doorstep of one well acquainted with such changelings of chance. For it was during Christmas week of last year that